Welcome back to the Pistons Jack YouTube channel. On today's episode, we'll be reacting to a former NBA executive's estimation for how much Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren next contract extensions could cost the Pistons. So let's get to it. A former NBA executive for the Memphis Grizzlies in the 2010s and current staff writer for The Athletic, John Hollinger, dropped an article in the past day or two outlining just how much some of the extension-eligible players around the NBA could be looking to sign for in the next few months for the rest of the summer. And of course, within there was two Detroit Pistons in Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren, who each are currently extension eligible. Ivey and Duren were both taken in the 2022 draft, and as they're at the end of their third season, heading into their fourth season, they both can be extended by the Detroit Pistons. And these contracts that they can be extended for those just who don't fully understand, whilst if they do sign an extension this summer, it wouldn't kick in this upcoming season. They would still complete the fourth year of their rookie deal. It would kick in the 26-27 season, just like Cade Cunningham, who's about to enter the first season of his rookie extension, which is around $51 million, I think, per year, due to his All-NBA selection last season. So we've heard Trajan Langdon, the current GM of the Pistons, touch on extensions for Ivey and Duren. Each of these young guys are in very different situations in terms of how their careers have played out so far. But Trajan said, I believe in late June, just before the draft, that they want to extend both. And it'll just depend on if each side can reach a number. And, obviously the Pistons have a number in mind, and then Ivey and Duren's camps are going to have a number in mind. Can they meet in the middle and come to a deal? We'll see what happens. Both could be extended right now. There's nothing, like Trajan said, it'll be something they look to do at the back end of the summer. So we haven't really heard a whole lot, but let's get into the article, because that's where I want to talk about each player's scenario, because it's very interesting. And I want to start with Jaden Ivey. And this is what Hollinger had in his piece about Jaden Ivey's current contract, potential contract extension. He said, after a 24-25 season that was mostly lost due to injury, I have a hard time seeing how the Pistons and Ivey could come to a resolution on a long-term number. The Pistons are under no long-term cap pressure and can afford to wait a year and gather more information, even if it costs them a bit if Ivey breaks out. There's also a fascinating cap nerd scenario where Detroit gives Ivey a one-year balloon payment next summer to set itself up for either in-season trades or 2027 cap space. Meanwhile, Ivey likely has just as much of an incentive to push up the value of his next contract rather than settle what would likely be a mid-level-ish type money on an extension. For what it's worth, Boards only sees him as a $10 million value player, and surely Ivey would frown at any figure in that range. So a couple of things here. First of all, that Boards acronym is an equation that Hollinger has made up, and it basically is comprised of some advanced metrics like Darko, LeBron, Per. It factors in things like projected per minute impact, projected wins above replacement, and it converts that to dollars. Things like players' age factors into the value. So if it's a younger player, the value is higher because it factors in potential, and the like. So I won't confuse people too much with this, because the equation to this is quite complicated, but this is something that Hollinger has used, and he shows proof in his article that it's something that's been quite accurate. Now, $10 million per year for Jaden Ivey seems way too low, but to explain that value, there's no way Jaden Ivey's accepting that. And look, obviously that's what Hollinger alludes to. It's just, I think that number, from doing my research and looking back at articles in this equation a little bit more, I think it is quite skewed down due to Ivey's lack of games played last season. I think that significantly hurts it, missing so much time. And then I think what else really hurts his value is the type of player Ivey is, being a score-first guard. They're quite volatile. Advanced numbers for Ivey aren't great because of the turnovers, because of the efficiency at times, And I think for young guards in general, advanced numbers do not like them. Like, unless you come in, hit the ground running, like someone like Luka Doncic, like your first few seasons as a guard in the NBA, the advanced numbers are typically not going to like you unless you're like a 3-and-D type player. But for guys like Ivy, who come into the league and want to be an on-ball scoring type player, the numbers necessarily aren't great, and that combined with the injuries is why his value is at $10 million. A lot of this, like when you look at though Ivy's season last year, he pretty much gave you 17 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists on 40% three-point shooting. Only 6 players in the entire NBA did that last year. Jaden Ivey was one of them. The others were Jokic, Sabonis, Kevin Durant, Zach LaVine, and Kyrie Irving. So some pretty good company there. Obviously, I think Ivy played the least games there. And when you look at like stats like win shares, Ivy is considerably lower than those other 5. But the numbers are solid for Ivy, the counting stats. And I think, like the article alludes to here, I think like for Ivy and the Pistons, I think here's what I'll say. The Pistons, I think, would probably like to secure Ivy on like a 4-year, $80 million deal. Just throwing that out there. Jaden Ivey would want probably nothing to do with that. I feel like Jaden Ivey sees himself as someone in and around that $30 million mark per year. Whether or not you agree with that, that's fine. But Jaden's, I can see why he would think that, and I can see why the Pistons would only be looking at something around 20 to 25 million per year maximum, probably more around the 20 million because of the injuries, because the team hasn't been very good while Ivy's been here, and that's certainly not his fault at all. There's been lots of external factors which have led to those poor records, but I think Jaden just needs to prove it, and he was proving it last year, and unfortunately his leg broke. We didn't get to see him in the playoffs, and it was, devastating to not have him there. So I think what my biggest takeaway here, and what I think a lot of Pistons fans should be aware of, is I don't think Jaden Ivey will sign an extension this summer. I would be shocked, because all signs point to the Pistons offering a deal lower than what Jaden expects, because that's kind of the data they have right now on him. But I think everyone knows the potential of Jaden Ivey, and we've seen it. Like the 5 or 6 games before he went down with injury, he was averaging like 20 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, shooting like 60% from 3 or 50% from 3, 60% from the field. Like he was right in the middle of one of those hot streaks we see him go on. And it was right when the Pistons season was starting to turn, when they had that 3-game winning streak on the road. He hit the game winner against Sacramento. He went off against the Suns in Phoenix, which was the first win of that 5-game win streak, of that really successful road trip, I should say, out west. So I feel like it was such a shame. I feel like Jaden, he had been solid for the whole 2 months, but he was really starting to figure out, and Cade and him were starting to play really well together, and it was leading to team success. And then, of course, after those 5 games, he goes down with a horrible injury, which, yeah, we've spoken about enough. But that's my thoughts on Jaden. I said, I went on Locked On Pistons a couple of weeks ago, and I said I think Jaden, I'd be happy to sign him for 4 years, $100 million. Maybe the Pistons don't even offer him that, but that's what I would be comfortable offering him. I still probably think Jaden might turn that down, but that's just my 2 cents on it. Let me know your thoughts, though. Would you extend him? Would you let him play it out? It's all very interesting. The next Piston to chat about is his fellow draft classmate in Jaylen Duren. And this is what Hollinger had to say on Jaylen Duren. Duren has his shortcomings as a defender and decision maker, but he's a top 15 center in the league, and he's still on the way up. Boards values Duren at $25.3 million annually for the coming season, and he's still in his early 20s. Detroit has no major cap obstacles in the future, and could even front-load a deal for Duren to help manage its downstream cap better. Either way, a total similar to the one I proposed for Dyson Daniels, around 5 years and $125 million, seems like the right ballpark. For a comparison point, Jarrett Allen signed for 5 years at $20 million a pop with Cleveland at a similar point in his development, and that was under the 2021 salary cap. Next year's cap projection is 32% higher, so almost an entire third more money in the salary cap than when Jarrett Allen signed that deal. So they're kind of, Jarrett Allen, that deal I think right now for Allen would be 5 years, $125 million. So I think that's a good comparison. And a lot of people will say, well, JD isn't a defender, Jarrett Allen is. And that might be true, but I think JD and Cade had like the best lob connection last season. I would guess, I don't have these advanced numbers, but I would guess they were one of the best pick and roll duos in the league. And sure, you can say, well, that's because he's playing with Cade, but I do think JD is an excellent, like he rolls to the rim well when he's dialed in. I think he's a great short roll passer. He's a much better playmaker and passer than Jarrett Allen. Like when you look at the assist numbers, JD averaged 2.7 last season, a career high. Allen averages, I think, 1.7 on his career with about 1.1 turnovers. JD, only 1.7 turnovers last year. So I think JD's playmaking is higher. I think around the basket with their touch, maybe Allen's slightly ahead at this stage of his career. JD's definitely a better rebounder, but you probably have to give the slight nod to Allen as a positional defender right now. Even if as actual rim protectors, I think even if Allen's marginally ahead, I think JD's catching up in that area. So I said when I was chatting with Koo a couple of weeks ago, I would be comfortable with giving Duren about 4 years, $100 million as well. I think JD, this is a deal that much more likely is to get done. I think JD, hasn't had the major injury issue that Ivey had last year. He was a big part, I felt, of the Pistons' success. I think Asar Thompson helped him dramatically defensively. Once Asar came back, it seemed to unlock a new level for JD, allow him to be his best on defense. Now, JD still has to improve a lot, and I think what the detractors will say is, well, Jack, the first 2.5 months of the season, which Jaylen Duren is the one you're going to pay? Is he now going to relax that he has an extension and go back to the one that lacked a motor? And JD called himself out about that lack of motor and energy. And he called himself out, flipped the switch, and was a different player in 2025 and throughout the playoffs. So I think, though, for a top 15 center in the league, around $25 million is the going rate. I think JD and Cade's chemistry is exceptional. I think he, off the court, JD, whilst he might be young, is a huge piece of that locker room, like in terms of vibes, in terms of just the connections he has with all players on the team. I think he's crucial to that, even at such a young age. And I think that does matter, and that does factor in when you want to keep a homegrown talent that you drafted. So I think 5 years, 125, or 4 years, 100 million I'm very comfortable with that. Maybe Jaylen thinks he's similar to Ivey, closer to 30 million, although I think I could see him signing up for a 5-year 125. So we'll see. We will see. I think, like I said, areas for improvement for JD is definitely defensive positioning. Like, I think when Asar's on the floor and able to limit people driving into the paint, JD thrives a lot more and is able to be more of a weak side rim protector, is able to focus on his rebounding and positioned a little bit better. But I think it's about making strides and being able to have more of an impact in the pick and roll, be better positioned, be more active, consistent with his hands in the pick and roll, in drop, and how the Pistons deploy him, whether they're hedging. I think it's just being more consistent in that area. But he doesn't turn 22 until I think November or December. So there's real room there for him to grow. Like, he's very young. Like, Cade's 23, Ivey I think's 23, Asar will be turning 23 this year. Like, JD's because of the size of him, you kind of forget that he's a couple of years younger than a lot of these guys. So I'm willing to invest that in him. I think I'm more of a believer in the second half of the season we saw from him, and I'd love to know your thoughts. What would you extend JD for? Do you think both of them get extended? None of them get extended? Let me know below. But until next time, as always, go Pistons.